Okay, I went over this in class, but just to give you a chance to take another look at it, or if you didn't see that in class, I wanted to give you a little tutorial about how to fix the landforms once it's been created. So we have a couple conditions. One's around the building here. We know there's a big retaining wall here behind amphitheater seating. And because the contours are basically an average of elevations from one point to another, when SketchUp creates the landform, it doesn't really understand that there's a wall here. So we've got this sloping up on the left side and then down the right. Unfortunately, on the right, there's a building here. And so really it should drop straight off and this should be much more level. So we need to clean that up a little bit. And then there's also a couple spots along the wall here. So I'm not going to take the time to go through the whole how to clean up the wall step by step. But I will show you, basically that's just moving things. So I'm going to the view menu, turning on hidden geometry, and I can see where my hidden lines are as well as the lines that are created on the landform from the draping process. And basically I can select any line in here. I'm going to use the move tool and just move those down until I regrade this so it looks a little bit better. This is the same situation. There's a retaining wall here. Instead of going to the wall and dropping straight down, it's sloping it out to the middle of the paving, and we don't want that. So you can either move things, you can move things several ways. I can grab a point at a time, and you also notice that it's kind of trying to move it back and forth here. If I hit the Alt key once, it'll put it in auto snap mode. So I can just pull that down, and what I want to do is move it along the blue axis. So again, usually I just grab the point, tap the Alt key, and then I can start moving. So sometimes this, may be the most efficient way to do it. Other times you may decide, well, this is kind of sloping up, and I might just grab an entire line, do the same thing, and drop that down. And again, you're going to have to zoom out and kind of look at it from different angles and decide if you've got it sloping down enough or not. You just want to make sure that if you do this, that you're not, okay, so now we can see that corner's kind of sticking up in there. So I'm just going to move around, click on that, hit the Alt key, and bring that down until it looks a little more in line. And again, ultimately the fine tuning really becomes a kind of a point by point basis. And you just have to keep backing out, zooming around, and looking at that. So I can keep moving those points until I have a nice smooth slope that comes down nice and gradually all along the edge of the wall there. And I don't really care that the wall itself creates this, it's going to create a steeper slope there, right? Because I'm leveling this out down below, and those points on the other side of the wall are still there. So, in some cases I may be pulling these points down. In other cases I might actually be pulling them up. If this one seems a little bit low in there, I could always bring this point up to level that out a little bit. Grab this edge, do the same thing. So it's kind of a matter of just balancing it off visually. I can start from the bottom here, kind of see what I have to work with. And again, the Alt key doesn't automatically give me the blue axis. What it does is put SketchUp in auto fold mode. And that means it allows SketchUp to start creating new triangulated faces in order to move the point or line in the direction that I'm trying to move. Otherwise, it wants to maintain the faces that are there, and it's basically just going to try and scoot you along the red or the green axis because it doesn't want to have to create new faces. But if you use that Alt key, it will put it in that mode. And so, that actually looks pretty good. That looks like a walkable sidewalk, right? It doesn't look like it's sloping too hard to one side or the other. So for this edge of the mound area, and the same is true of this edge, you can see it's kind of gone through the wall all the way out to the road. So you might actually need to move some of these lines down, and then you might move a few of these down as well, just so that we have a more consistent, you can see this slope along the curve is pretty consistent, except it bumps up there and then it goes back down. So if we can reshape this so that that line kind of connects to that line, it will look good. And then when we place the wall in there that we've created, then you won't see the discrepancy in the landform. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of moving points or lines in order to create the slope that you want. We don't need to use the smooth tool or the artisan tools, just use the move tool to do that. Now over on the other side here where the building is, it's a little more complicated because we've got lots of lines in here. And so really the first thing we want to do is just simplify that process. So I'm going to uncheck my hidden geometry and go back to my select tool. And essentially what I want to do is to delete everything inside of here, even these walls, and just leave the sidewalk boundary that you can see I'm outlining here, and disconnect all these other pieces. That way I can get the sidewalk and this front wall down where I want it, and then rebuild that internal surface by using the terrain from contours. And let me show you how that works. I'm just going to start by deleting that. I'm going to use the eraser tool. Probably help also to show the hidden geometry in this case. So I'm going to leave this line intact, but I'm taking everything else out that I can find here. And to do that quickly, it doesn't hurt to come in, delete a few pieces like that. Then I can get the select tool and just triple click, and it will select everything that's connected. And since I just disconnected that from everything else, then I don't have to worry about accidentally selecting the wrong pieces. So if you go in here and do that and then triple click, it's going to select everything else and just delete it out of there. Same with this, probably simpler just to get rid of these edges here. And you could do it with these pieces intact, but it just makes it a little more complicated. So again, I'm going to come back here, delete those pieces out of there, and then triple click, get everything, and just remove it. So I could do the same thing with this. Maybe I'll leave this piece in so you can see the difference between those. And I'll probably come in here and get rid of this line as well. So basically what I want is this sidewalk freestanding. Because what I need to do is, if I can get this sidewalk leveled out and this edge along here leveled out the way I want it, then I'll just rebuild the surfaces there, and it doesn't take very long to do. Much easier than trying to move all those corners and points around. So let's start by kind of setting this sidewalk that comes in along from the front sidewalk. It's the entry walk to the maintenance building. So if I can get that set at the right level, then I can cue everything else off of that. So again, I'm just going to start moving this and looking at that and say, yeah, that looks, well, that might be a little low there, right? Because it has to have a little slope on it so we get some good drainage. And then I'll bring this down to meet. That should slope a little bit that direction, but maybe not too much. And bring that down. And once you know you have a couple points, then you can kind of pull it down and make sure that the perspective just looks correct. And again, maybe this point needs to come up a little bit. Maybe this point needs to come down. Tell you what, in this case, I'm going to grab this whole edge here and move that down. Again, back up, look at it, say, okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. It's kind of sloping up, levels out a little bit, and then I've, got this last corner here. That's still kind of tilting up in the air, right? So if I can get this around here and drop that back down, that looks pretty good. That's fairly level. And then as you come out away from the building, the sidewalk slopes back down fairly gently to the sidewalk. And then I can come in here and do the same thing. I can grab this, drop it down a little bit. If we looked at this from a little farther out, you can kind of see that this side was really pretty good. Maybe it's still a little tilted up there, but it wasn't sitting too bad. So we could pull that down, pull that down. And if you need to zoom in a little bit to get the right increment, just zoom in a little bit. Okay, that looks a little better. Fairly level through there. I zoom out that whole front edge. Maybe it's a little high here, but that's actually drainage-wise not a bad idea. Okay, so now I've got that kind of reshaped the way I want it. Slopes up, still a little bit of slope away from the building. It's kind of level around the front here. This slopes down. So now to rebuild this is pretty straightforward. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw a line straight down from this corner that was the existing corner and tap into that line and then connect to that line. So that tells me kind of where that edge is going to be. And then I can draw a line from this corner up to there to here. Can start closing that in from here to here. And then from here, I can kind of come across to here, back down to that corner. You can see I'm starting to now have another point there. So if I go from there down to there, it should fill that all in. So again, that's kind of a nice slope down along there. And this piece in here is going to disappear once that wall, I mean, I won't be able to see that gap once the wall goes in there. So I'm really going to select this and just get that out of there. You can use the eraser tool with the control key down, and that smooths all those surfaces off. So now I've just got a nice uniform slope sloping down from there. You know, technically that might be draining down into the wall a bit, but if we want to fix that, we could come across here and raise that up. But again, for what we're doing right now, it's not going to make too much difference. So that's pretty good. So I've got this lower piece closed in. And now what I want to do to close the main body in is start from here, zoom in, connect to that endpoint. And if you look from above here, if I get the right angle, you can kind of see that now I've got that surface. I can start with this line and just select the boundary edges for this whole area. Click on the wrong one, zoom in a little bit, shift click to select. So just work your way around. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Fortunately, there's not too many small segments in here, but it's still a lot faster. I mean, you can start drawing lines in to triangulate this yourself, but I think this is still quite a bit faster than trying to do that, especially as you'll see when we get over to the back here. Just because the way this edge was created, there's a whole bunch of little short segments. So if you were drawing lines to connect this up, you would have to draw a line to triangulate to every single one of these points, which would take you a while to do. It, you know, takes a while to select them, but once you get through here and you get all those selected, as you can see here, all I need to do is go to the terrain from contours tool, click on that, and it will automatically generate a terrain that gets filled in. And of course, that's a group. So what I want to do first is go inside the group. And you can see because of the corners, it's kind of coming across here. And if I delete those extra segments, it's making those connections to all those little points, which I said would be a lot of trouble to do. And you can just go in there and delete those pieces. You can see across the corner here, and it will stay intact. So it's not really a problem for the landform. So once you get most of those kind of corners done, I'm going to turn my hidden geometry back off, select that, get outside that group, right click, explode it, and now you can see it's just a regular surface that's been blended in with everything else. The sidewalks still are intact and separate from everything, so we can apply materials to those. If I want to get you know, material around there, there. Okay, if I pick up the gray there, I can apply that there and there, whatever that is. So now I've got this separate entity, and when I bring the building in, it will just drop right in down there. I can line it up with that space. And if you have a floor to your building, you probably will see this piece of landform kind of cutting through it. And you know, in the end, we could probably have not even created that if we wanted to, because if the building covers that space up, we don't really need this. So you can either use the floor of the building, or if you want it to be sloped, which it actually is, this is kind of an outdoor work yard, so it does slope out this direction. You could just delete the floor of the building once you bring it in, go into the group and delete it, and it will fit in there. And you won't see the intersection between that level plane and the sloping surface of the landform there. But that's kind of two approaches, actually really good approaches to understand. One is just simply moving points around in order to reshape the landform. And the other case, when it's more complicated, is to actually delete out a lot of the pieces, use a couple reference points to make sure it gets placed in the right shape. And then once you Once you've got everything in place, there we go, then you can just reform that with the landform or terrain from contours tool. Okay, hopefully that'll help, and I'll keep working on some other tutorials in the near future. Thanks.